Welcome to the Moffitt Method Podcast, where longtime strength and conditioning coach Tommy Moffitt explores everything from the art of coaching, improving performance, sports nutrition, and mental training. Now, welcome your host, Coach Tommy Moffitt.
Welcome to the Moffitt Method Podcast. If you're listening for the first time, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review, and please share it with all of your friends. Today's incredibly talented guest is Coach Cody Hughes, Director of Human Performance at Madison Academy, located in the great state of Alabama. Coach Hughes has coached in the SEC, FCS, Division II, and is now a high school strength and conditioning coach. Coach Hughes began his coaching career at Mississippi State University as an intern in the summer of 2016, working under Coach Nick Savage and his staff. Coach Hughes then moved on to become the first ever strength and conditioning GA at Division II West Alabama, where he assisted with football, volleyball, men's and women's basketball, and baseball. After 1 year, Coach Hughes accepted the Associate Director of Strength and Conditioning position at McNeese State University under then Coach Ben Souders. At McNeese, Coach Hughes was responsible for the internship program, the quarterbacks and wide receivers for the football team, while also training the volleyball, softball, and baseball team. In 2018, Coach Hughes moved to Huntsville, Alabama to become the Director of Human Performance at Madison Academy, where he is currently in his 5th year. Welcome to the podcast, Coach Hughes. How are we doing today?
I'm doing great, Coach. I appreciate you having me on. You know, the fact that I'm whatever I am, the 4th or 5th guy from the state of Alabama, you know, just to be on your podcast, that's a cool, I don't know if it's a coincidence or what, but thanks for having me on. It's an honor.
You're very welcome. I appreciate you doing it. I know you're busy. So we'll get started with the questions and answers. So, you know, the first one is the stereotypical strength coach question, but everyone's path in this field is a little different. And, you know, just tell us what led you to the field of strength and conditioning. Who were some of the people that may have influenced you along the way?
Yeah, I've got a lot of people to thank because I stand on the shoulders of giants, and that's the truth. I tell everybody that I was very blessed to have some elite mentors because I know this field can chew you up and spit you out if you don't get started in a good situation. So I got really, really blessed. So I'll go all the way back to when I was in high school. I was a kid I tell everybody this, it's a funny analogy, that I always had a massive motor with a gas tank of a used weed eater from a lawn sale. Like, that's kind of how I was. Very powerful, run out of gas fast. So like, I love to lift. And if you asked me to do conditioning or run, I hated it and wouldn't do it. I refused to do it to this day. I'm not, if you catch me running, you better run too. Cause I'm running away from something. Something's chasing me, but I love to lift. I was good at it. Went to college. I was a Division II baseball player. And we didn't have a strength coach there. It was really just kind of go in the fitness center and do your thing. They would give us a guide and we kind of made it up as we went, you know, and trained terribly. As we look back, it was very powerlifting based and just trying to lift the house. And I was really good at it. And it kind of put me in a leadership position with the team inside of the weight room. And I kind of took that on even to the point where I was a senior programmed for our team because I knew I was going into the field. But if you back up, a couple of things happened. I started off getting my degree in kinesiology because I wanted to go into physical therapy. That's a very common story for the strength coach, right? Mm-hmm. My sophomore year after baseball, I had to have arm surgery. I had a stress fracture in my olecranon in my right elbow. I had to have a screw put in. So no summer baseball or anything. And I had to do rehab. Well, went into therapy, first time I've ever really been in a therapy setting. And I was like, oh, this is awful. This is slow. The environment's slow. People complaining all the time. You're dealing with people that, you know, are trying to get insurance claims and are not really hurt because they got to, you know, it was just a lot. And I was like, man, I don't know if I really want to do this. I was like, but I'm going to continue my degree path and see if I can figure it out. And remember, at this point, I had no idea strength coach even existed. I had no idea. Yeah. Like, I was at a Division II school. I had no idea. So we continue on. And then between my junior and senior year of college, I had to have an internship to graduate, a 12 credit hour internship. Went down and sat with my advisor. And she started listing out here's some places you can go intern at. And I was just looking to graduate. And one of the first things she said was, well, there's a boutique style personal training gym about 45 minutes from here. And it's a paid internship. And I cut her off right there. I was like, paid? I'm in. I got it. I need just let's do it. So between my junior and senior year, I went and did that internship, and I got really lucky because one, it was a really small, I'd say about 800 square foot personal one-on-one boutique style personal training gym in Mountain Brook, Alabama. And if you know anything about Mountain Brook, Alabama, it is a very wealthy area, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I got to stay with a friend of mine who lived in the area, so I got to live for free, which was great, and learn how to train people, right? I love to work out, and I thought, hey, this is great. Well, the guy that owned the gym was a former strength coach. He was a CSCS, and he kind of understood it. And it was a 3-month internship for the summer. And as I started training just general population people, he was like, man, you kind of got a knack for this coaching thing. Like, you really enjoy this? I was like, yeah, I do, you know. And he's like, well, you should look at being a strength conditioning coach. And I said, what is that? I seriously had no idea. I was like, strength conditioning coach. He goes, you know, like the people that train the athletes, the team athletes. And I was like, where does that happen? Because we don't have that. And he's like, well, let me put you in touch with some people. So he put me in touch with a guy at UAB, which is right down the street.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of gave me the rundown. Yeah, this is this. If you ever want to come shadow or whatever. Well, I kind of put it off to the side, finished my internship, went back to school, getting ready for my senior year of baseball, still trying to figure out what I'm going to do, and sat down with my coaches, my pitching coach, who was still a huge mentor to me to this day. I was like, I really would love to be a strength conditioning coach, but I don't really know anything about it. And coach looked at me and said, well, my first cousin is the associate director of strength conditioning for football at Mississippi State. Let me give you his number. And I said, are you serious? So it ended up being Zach Ackenberger, if you know Zach.
Mm-hmm.
And called Zach, and Zach was great. He said, hey, this is the journey. Let me just tell you, Cody, right? You got to go intern. You got to find a way to be a GA. You got to make relationships in order to climb in this field. And I was like, awesome. Can I come intern for you? And he was like, well, come hang out and let's talk. So in January of my senior year, right before baseball started, I drove to Starkville from Birmingham, not that far.
Yeah.
And formally interviewed for an internship to agree to come that summer when I was done playing. Cause I was not good enough to try to pursue pro ball or anything like that. I was just going to graduate and go. And then my next focus was pass my CSCS before I graduate and go intern, and let's do this thing. My parents were willing to support me to go live there for the summer. I was in a really good situation. So he explained it to me. They said yes. I was locked in to go intern at Mississippi State. Went to take my CSCS in May of 2016 when I graduated undergrad and failed by 4 points. I was so devastated.
Wow.
But I was like, well, because I thought, well, that's going to be the differentiator for me to get a job after that or get a GA-ship.
Yeah.
But I failed, and you got to wait 6 months to take it again. So I go to Mississippi State, and I was bit by the bug, Coach. Like, I had been playing Division II baseball, but I grew up a massive Auburn fan. I grew up right down the road from Auburn, Alabama. My dad went to Auburn. I am an Auburn fan. That was going to be
one of my questions. Yeah.
So like,
Roll Tide or War Damn Eagle?
I'm War Damn Eagle all day, but my wife graduated from Bama, and you can know how that goes. But huge Auburn fan. I was a ball boy for Auburn basketball as a kid. Like, wow. I would actually, it was, I'm big time connected in Auburn. Always loved sports and just being around teams. I love to win, and just the thing that athletics brought. And when I saw the energy that came from from SEC style training, summer training, I was obsessed. I didn't care that I was an intern working 100-hour weeks. Right. I didn't want to be in my apartment unless I was sleeping. I was in the building all day, every day, soaking it up, man. And I was with Coach Nick Savage, Coach Zach Ackenberger, and then Coach Riley Allen, who was at Ole Miss basketball right now. And cool story about my internship there. So like, one, I was on my toes all the time. Interns, man, you gotta earn your keep. You got to earn your trust. And one of the things we did was every intern, there's about 8 of us in that class, and we had to be at a rack with a coach and help collect the data. And then the interns would give the data to one master sheet to one intern that put all of that data on a master sheet. And then that intern took it to the data guy to put it in the spreadsheet. Yeah. And if you screwed it up, you getting fired, not from the internship, but from that job. And the first guy that did it screwed it up. I'm like, all right, Hughes, your turn. And I was like, oh, you better believe I'm not screwing this up. Like, I'm double checking, triple checking, quadruple checking. And Riley Allen was the data guy. And when I kind of earned that trust and I made his life a little bit easier, I tried to add value to his life. Like, how do I get this data so easy to enter and he don't have to worry about it? And he kind of noticed, like, man, you really got a knack for this thing. You're solving problems. That's huge. Let me teach you a little bit. So he kind of took me under his wing and taught me a lot. And we still talk to this day. And I ended up getting recommended for a graduate assistantship at a Division II at the University of West Alabama. First ever Division II. They had a head strength coach, and that's it. I really liked it because, one, it was close to my fiance at the time. I could be a full-time assistant responsibility, right? I could get on the floor and coach. That's what they were like. You're going to be able to get on the floor and coach, even though it's Division II, and you get multiple sports. You get a lot of experience. So I'm glad I got recommended to that, passed my CSCS, went down and became that. And that was an incredible experience, coach, like being able to be thrown into the fire, because the head strength coach who was there, his name's Joseph Boyd, my biggest mentor to this day, was like, look, I ain't got time to babysit you. You got to grow up. I'll look over your programming a little bit, and we're just going to go, and you're going to learn on the fly, and we're going to do this. And that was the best growing that I ever had as a coach, was in that experience. It was just me and him running 12, 15 sports. I was assisting with football. I was running 4 other sports. He was running 3 other sports, and we were trying to be competitive, and understanding what inside of a college program looks like. And that was a really good experience. And then a year into my GA-ship, I got offered a job to be the assistant director full-time at McNeese State in Lake Charles. And I was about to get married. So I was throwing resumes like crazy. So I'm not about to be a GA and be married. Ain't no way. Yeah. So I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for these jobs, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. And one happened to hit. Hey, I went and interviewed, drove down, did really well. And they offered me the job as an assistant strength coach, the only assistant full-time they had. And it's funny because I got hired, and then about 3 weeks later, the head guy left. And I was like, oh gosh, I'm about to get married in May. I'm about to get married in April. It's March. Like, are they going to just tell me no? Like, I'm freaking out. Well, administration keeps me, and then they hire Ben Souders, who was one of the top coaches I've ever coached for, one of the top men I've ever been associated with. And I got lucky. That's another bounce that went my way, coach, was like, I got to be retained and then got to work for him. And then we hired 2 other guys, and then we were rolling. Yeah. So I got married in April, went on my honeymoon. We packed the truck and went 12 hours to Lake Charles, and I was there. And I really got to see the real grind of a little bit higher level football, and then having real actual responsibility. I was running the internship program. I was, for our football guys, I was doing quarterbacks and receivers. I was a baseball guy, so I was a little more knowledgeable on the shoulder and how to demand on that, doing all of our data stuff. But I was also running volleyball, baseball, and softball at the same time. Nonstop, man. In FCS football, during football season, you're not riding luxurious. We drove the equipment truck, across, and then you don't stay the night because you ain't got the funds in the budget. Right. So like, we'll play a 7:00 game at Stephen F. Austin or at Abilene Christian in Texas, and then we're in that equipment truck and we're driving through the night taking turns, and then we got to be up at the weight room on Sunday to train the red shirts. Yeah. And I was just freshly married, coach. That was tough. That was tough.
I was going to ask you, one of the questions I had was your relationship to Mississippi State, and if you had applied at LSU, but you never even got to apply to any other place for an interview.
I had no idea, coach. I was so green, and I had that one connection, and it was decently close. I could go interview. Like, to be honest, coach, if you would have said you need to apply to LSU, I would have been like, yeah, that's funny. I don't have a shot in the world at that. I didn't have enough connections. I had none. I had one. And it was my pitching coach that knew Zach. Yeah. And that was my end. Like,
so one of the things when I was reviewing resumes was collegiate sports experience. I felt like, that gave, not that you have to be a collegiate athlete to be a strength coach, but I think it adds value to your experience having played it. And I found that Division II, Division III, and FCS coaches or former athletes became great coaches. And then you throw in, how well you did academically and team captain. And so, you checked off all the boxes for me. So I was trying to figure out, how did this guy end up at Mississippi State if he's applying for internships and we didn't have him? Because, and I'm not blowing smoke either, you fit the criteria for us and our selection process. So
it would have been a hard decision. if I would have known to even do that, because that's,
Yeah.
you never know. If I could have bumped into the right person and said, well,
Right.
you need to try to get in with Tommy Moffitt at LSU and try, I would have definitely done it. You know, I was like, I am open. I am chasing this thing. And I just happened to end up at Mississippi State, and it was a great experience under some good dudes. And, you know, and then getting to Mississippi State and then getting to McNeese State and becoming that's the crazy part is I was an intern, think August 2016, right? I became a full-time director in May of 2017, a full-time assistant director. Sorry.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I jumped pretty fast, and I still had no idea how youthful I was, and I knew nothing. I look back on my time at McNeese, and I almost want to apologize to Ben sometimes. I'm like, yo, I was not very good. Like I was a full-time coach, but I was so young and made so many mistakes and thought I knew everything. I was at the top of that Dunning-Kruger effect chart, you know, right before everything started to pop off, and had some skills, but still had a long way to go. And it kind of got to a point there where, you know, I didn't really know if I wanted to continue chasing this because I never saw my wife. I knew that Ben was out the door. He had already accepted the job to go to Georgia, right? He came to McNeese and then got the opportunity to go be on Coach Sinclair's staff. And I was like, we don't know what's going to happen here. So I actually there's a gap in my resume. I actually took a job in Colorado in the private sector. Just wanted to do something new and try it. It really wasn't for me. I wasn't very good at it. I sucked at sales at that point in my life and didn't really fit real well in the culture up there. We were there for about 5 months, and that's when Madison Academy job opened up, and I had some connections because this is home in Huntsville. I had some family connections. I got my foot in the door, and I had enough experience to get the job, and I've been here for 5 years now. So, and we've taken this thing and ran with it.
Yeah. Awesome. And everybody's journey is different, and but there are some similarities. And most of the guests that I've had on here did not know that it was a profession. And I got lucky when I was young. I met at the time, he was the head string coach at the University of Tennessee, Bruno Pauletta.
Mm-hmm.
I met Bruno. I was working while I was in college at a state park during the summertime, and I met Coach Pauletta, and we had a great conversation. And I, ultimately ended up getting a job at the University of Tennessee, not with him, but with the guy that replaced him when he retired. But it's interesting how people find their way through this profession.
Yeah, and you get lost inside of it too, because like once you're in it, you're like, it's close. It's a small world. You go to conference and you know everybody, especially with the world of social media. But then you go to like Thanksgiving with your family that has no idea. What do you do again? You're a trainer. What do you do? Don't worry about it. I train the athletes, whatever that is.
And then for me, and it's still this, and it's I'm not being weird when I say it, but it was an addiction for me. When you just said, that the summer training when you were at Mississippi State was the most amazing thing that you've ever experienced. And that's the way, almost 30 years of my career. I guess I coached in college for 28 years. So for 28 years, it was that type of energy, and I got addicted to it, and I'm about halfway through that 12-step process I got, I guess, of dealing with it. But it was an awesome experience, and I understand it, man. Understand it completely.
And that's kind of where I fall in strength conditioning is I like to win, coach.
Yeah.
Like I love the science of training, but I feel like some strength coaches are so obsessed with the barbell that they lose, especially if you're in a team setting, right? If you're in a team setting, get so caught up in barbell and lose the overall arching goal of our team to win
games.
Yeah, win games. Like that's what I like to do. Like I don't know if I could ever be a person that trains general population people or be a fitness guy. I'm a win guy, but I use strength conditioning to get there and really love the science of training and then the dynamics inside of a team. Like that's what bit me. Not just the iron, but the winning part.
Right. And that's why we sought out former collegiate athletes, that was one of the prerequisites. And then again, team captains, most valuable players, strength and conditioning award winners, that personality type were the type of people that we look for. And you can go down the list of the 60 some odd guys that came through our program, and the vast majority of those guys fit that mold. And they came from small ball because you paid to play. And when you do that, I think that adds value again to your experience, because for you and for me and for a lot of other people, athletics is something that we do because we love. It's not a means to an end. It wasn't for me. I figured that out quick. And my favorite sport coming out of high school, or going into high school and coming out of high school, was still the sport of wrestling. I played football in college because I couldn't wrestle in college. And so wrestling wasn't a sport then that you couldn't make any money. USA Wrestling, paid those guys pennies when they made it to the Olympics. So,
Yeah, cool.
So you are officially the third high school strength coach from the great state of Alabama to be on this podcast. So that's so my question is it a coincidence, like you mentioned, or is the state of Alabama doing something different in high school strength and conditioning?
Man, I want to put it this way. Like, one, I think that high school football in the state of Alabama, especially in the Birmingham area, is top notch around the country. I'm not saying it's as good as Texas. I'm not saying it's as good as California in those big market areas.
Yeah.
But as far as a smaller market, and you got Mississippi and Alabama kind of next to each other, but like the way that football has driven demand, and I feel like that's helped curate the strength and conditioning coach position, because that's kind of how it works. But it's become, I think it's really taken off over the last 5 years or so because of our organization. The NHSSCA has been tremendous on just trying to get to know coaches and establish relationships. And I'll tell everybody right now, the group that we've got in this state, like I can name right now, we've got 12 full-time guys right now in Alabama. I can just name off the top of my head.
Right.
And how close-knit we are, how much we share things together, how we've become such close friends because of this organization. Like I've leaned on like the two guys you've had on, Brandon and John Herschel. Like we're in a group text right now and we talk all the time. We just had our state clinic 2 Saturdays ago, and we got to reconnect, and it was tremendous. It's real refreshing. I tell our guys, I'll put our group up against any other state to this day. Like I really think we're that strong. And it really helps when we've got a group like that that's always talking, always trying to demonstrate value, and then we're constantly together trying to reach out to coaches and from a position of, hey, how can I help? Right? Like where are you struggling in the weight room that we can help you, whether it's resource wise, education wise, because that's a big one. Like they just don't know what they don't know. So like we just feel really purposeful, with how we, one, help each other, and then two, use our experience to help others. And we really try to do that on our home turf, being the state of Alabama.
I've been to 3 of the National High School Strength and Conditioning Association state clinics. And the photo that somebody put on Twitter, Instagram last week of the one that y'all had in Alabama, there were more people at y'all's conference or meeting than there were the other 3 states combined. And it was their state. I spoke at 2, and then I was a guest at another. And y'all had more, I guess it was last weekend or 2 weekends ago, than the other 3 states combined. So that says a lot. And then,
huge ups to Brandon Herring. He's our director, and Brandon, like he fought tooth and nail to make that thing happen behind the scenes, market it right. It doesn't help that, it doesn't hurt that you had Dave Ballou as the keynote speaker either. So, and everybody in the state of Alabama wants to hear what Alabama football is doing. So that was really good on his part for finding availability for him to speak. So it was really well done.
Yeah, I was sitting with Dave the day before, and I went over there to watch him run on Friday, and he had his presentation pulled up on his computer. So I was sitting there talking to him, and then I looked up on his computer screen. I was like, "Oh shoot, man, he's in here working. I need to let the guy go." But he had a junior day that morning, and then after that, he drove to the conference. And if anybody, I think everyone knows Coach Saban, but his junior days, his recruiting days are brutal. And that's why they've been so successful. And for Dave to be able to, do that and then drive down there and do his talk is unbelievable. But so you mentioned Dave Ballou, then you got Dom Studzinski at Auburn, who is phenomenal.
I'm so thrilled that he's
Rusty
at Auburn,
Witt
coach.
Yeah, you got Rusty Witt at Troy. You have Blake McCall at Jacksonville State. We've recorded his episode, and his will be on soon.
Awesome.
And then you have, and I don't know, do you know Jason Poeth at Alabama?
I don't.
Yeah, so Jason was one of the first GAs that I hired here back in 2000 or 2001.
Mm-hmm.
But then he went, after he left LSU, he went and worked in the Mobile area and worked for Encore Rehab, and he had some, training facilities. But then he's been at Alabama now for probably 12 or more years.
Wow.
And is now an assistant on Dave's staff. So he's done track and field soccer and a bunch of other sports. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure which ones, but Jason is a really, really good strength coach. In fact, he owns the company called True Athletics, if you've seen their bumpers or barbells and equipment. So Jason's been there a long time. So anyway, so the state has some really good collegiate strength coaches there as well.
Yes, it does. We try to visit them all the time. I've tried to connect myself within that. I actually know, like, outside of your tree, but like at Alabama, you've got Henry Barrera, who's on the basketball side now, is really good. You've got, going down to Auburn, I've met with I want to get in the door with Dom, because I know him. In fact, he's got Cam Joss on staff. Like, they're going to be, especially with that new facility, like, they're going to be something serious. The basketball staff at Auburn with Bruce Pearl that I've been able to get on the inside of, which is really cool. The state of Alabama runs rich with good strength coaches, and it's not a 2-hour drive from being able to anywhere in the state to be able to find somebody that's really good, on top of the high school guys as well.
Yeah. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of what you're doing at Madison, I thought it would be great to hear about the time that you spent coaching in college. And so we talked a little bit about this already, your time at Mississippi State, but can you compare the different types of athletes that you coached at the FCS level, the D2 level, and how they may be or may not be different than some of the athletes that you were around while you were at Mississippi State?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Being a D2 ball player, and I came from a high school, Central Phoenix City, where we've put out some really good players, right? It's a really good football program in high school, but then moving to play Division II baseball, and then going straight into like an SEC football roster and looking at these dudes like, we got some, like, this is supposed to be middle tier SEC, and these are some freaks walking around this thing. Like, I'm not even at Alabama or LSU or Georgia. Like, woo, like, these guys are crazy. One thing, looking in retrospect now, so if you look at Mississippi State versus McNeese versus West Alabama, I would say that there's definitely a gap from athlete type. One, in the SEC, you're going to get some serious anomalies of just freak athletes. Guys that can just really fly. I was like, how can a person that big run that fast? And move that well? Just freaking natures. And the approach at that level is develop, but you have to protect these guys from their outputs to keep them healthy. And it's a whole operation. What I noticed of, like, we had the guy, I think I'm slipping a name but there was a small running back at Mississippi State. I think his name was Brandon Holloway. He was a small scat back, real tiny, 5'7", 160, but he's a 4'3" guy. He can absolutely fly. But he never got on a squat rack. He had some injury history. He was always either on the shuttle MVP, or he was on a squat pro, or he was on, something to just train, or he was on a pit shark, something to keep the load off his axial skeleton. And seeing that play, that how they balanced all that. It didn't make sense to me at the time because I was so young. And not saying that it's such a different lens of the development of, you get a guy that's already a freak as a freshman at Mississippi State, and then what he needs to develop into to even play at that level. The development's a lot higher. The stakes are higher. You move down to FCS at McNeese State, it's different because you're going to have a lot more turnover. You're trying to get drop down guys that were really, because you got to find more talent to compete. So the development on like the strength and conditioning side is not as prevalent, because you've got guys that are, I mean, you may have a guy for 6 months, you may have a guy for 18 months, and that's it. You don't find a whole lot of guys coming in as freshmen and just going to ride that through. But sometimes that does happen. So funny you say that. We had 2 freshmen at McNeese State that ended up, after Guidry left, they left as well. And one went to Syracuse and was an all ACC DN, and one went to Marshall and was an all conference safety. Like, they were just diamonds in the rough, right? So they did a really good job recruiting and finding those guys that didn't time right. And they developed well there, but then they left, and they were the same caliber athletes. So the gap wasn't as big, but the training approach was a lot different. You know, the management approach was a lot different. But definitely as a whole, not as good of an athlete, but still some really good ones. I mean, it's still Division I football. And then Division II, it's, you may have, because they get a lot at West Alabama, we got a lot of drop downs. Like we would take some junk now, because you kind of had to. You had to take some guys get kicked out of school or whatever to be able to compete and do it at a high level. But if you look at it from from just a whole, like a forest aspect, it's all depth, right? It's a depth deal. So like you look at Mississippi State, you're looking at 3rd string, 4th string guy, you're like, God, dog, like, and maybe not as much at Mississippi State, but if you go watch a practice at Alabama or LSU, and you're just like, dude, the threes are huge too. Like, holy cow, those guys are just big of freaks. You know, at D2 at West Alabama, you may have a really good on your ones, and then as you get deeper in the depth chart, it's just going to drop off really fast. So trying to stay healthy and keep your best guys on the field, and then develop guys into role players. That's kind of what we did at West Alabama. Like, a lot of times we would get a lot of the guys that went to JUCO in Mississippi that thought they had a chance to play Division I ball, and the dice, you know, things just didn't roll their way. They end up coming for 2 years at West Alabama. I mean, we did really well. I mean, while I was there, we won the conference championship and lost in the 3rd round, ended up losing to West Florida, who won the national championship that year. Like, we were good. We were pretty good. And, you know, putting out Tyreek Hill and Malcolm Butler and guys at that. I mean, they're known for their football. So it wasn't no knock. And the same thing I tell my high school guys now. I'm like, guys, you want to over here talk about, oh, I'm too good for D2? I said, dude, you want me to take you to a practice and show that these guys will knock your head off and you're not even close to being ready to play at this level? Like, it's still college football, guys, you know? So there is a gap. I think depth is a big deal. But once you get to those top tier levels, it exponentially goes up, especially at like the blue blood level.
Yeah. There was, you know, in my time at LSU, we had guys that were, you know, 2nd and 3rd team that could have played for a lot of different teams that, you know, that just got stuck on our roster. And then we had walk-ons that would come to LSU that could have played and didn't have a single offer coming out of high school, but there were walk-ons, and we would look at him and say, why didn't somebody recruit this kid? Because he can play. But, you know, those guys all went on to become doctors and lawyers and engineers and stuff. But you got to.
Can I ask you a question, Coach? I want to ask you a question. You a question. So you talk about those 2nd and 3rd string guys, but they still wouldn't play. Like, they may have had the makeup, may have had the body, they had some of the skills. What made the difference? Why couldn't they find their way on the field?
Yeah, a lot of times it has to do with processing. Their ability to process all of the stuff. In fact, I'm wearing my S2 Cognition shirt today. Not sure if you're familiar with it, but S2 Cognition is a company that they're cognitive neuroscientists. You know, they're not former coaches or, you know, some jack of all trade. These guys are actually scientists that worked in medical centers and hospitals and that were in surgery. In brain surgery. So these guys developed a series of tests where they're huge in collegiate and professional football, baseball, basketball, any sport that has a ball. And they have found some compelling evidence that there are some people that just lack the ability to process the information quickly enough and accurately enough to make it, or they could
Some
be
guys just
great
got that
collegiate
dial-up internet.
players. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Some guys still
So
stuck on that dial-up internet.
yeah. So in a decision making process, athletes, they value two things. They either value speed or they value accuracy. And it's a balance between speed and accuracy that determines your decision that you make. And, they've got it broken down by position. And, so I've read some really good reports from them that they have prepared for, the NFL through NFL type players, because every player that goes to the combine, the Senior Bowl, all of those players get tested by S2.
Wow.
So now they have years and years of information on how those players are ranked and how successful they've been in the NFL based on the scores that they made coming out of college. So they have compelling evidence on the score on their test and the passing efficiency and the longevity of quarterbacks, and how important it is for how safeties and cornerbacks differ, how wide receivers and DBs, corners differ. So they've got this all broken down. And so to a large degree, it has to do with how you process information.
Yeah, I remember I had a buddy of mine who walked on at Alabama as an offensive lineman, and him coming back talking about and he was a 30 ACT guy, and he was still saying the playbook and the responsibilities there's so much going on. Yeah. This is crazy.
Right. And so because the game is, you want to speed the game up, and the defense, a guy like Nick Saban or any high level coordinator is going to do everything they can to disguise the coverage and disguise their blitzes. So the quarterback goes up to the line of scrimmage, and he scans the field and looks, at the formation, and then he has a play called. He changes his play. He has to move the formation. And while all of that's going on, your offensive linemen have their face looking at the ground and their back to all this movement. And so that in offensive line, I think, is the hardest position to play on the field. And then the center ultimately is the guy that's making all of those calls. And so it's a chess match, and it happens in a matter of, especially with the high tempo offenses, sometimes it takes place in 17 seconds. So, especially when there's a big first down and the whole sideline has to move, let's say it's a 30-yard gain, the whole sideline moves. You got the guys with the sticks, they're running down the sideline. As soon as they get those sticks marked, the play's called and the ball's thrown. And so it's tough. And then competitive spirit. Some guys just want it more than others. And so Coach Saban said it all the time. You're either playing for something or you're just out there. Yeah. And so a large degree, there are just certain players, whether it's got to do with their family or something that he's held on to since he's a child, his child or her childhood. Some people just want it more than others. And it's not physical, really. There's everybody in our league trained, and everybody in our league ran and, sprinted and did all that we could. I've competed against Nick Savage and Paul Jackson and all of these guys, Kevin Yoxel, and you name them. And so we all did some very similar stuff, but it boils down to Jimmys and Joes, man. Yeah. It's just like in baseball. All right. And this, if you've got a guy that's slinging it off the mound and he's throwing it 99 miles an hour and he can throw 4 pitches, and you've got, 4 or 5 guys in your lineup that can put the ball in play, you're going to be a dang good baseball team,
Yeah, no doubt.
And that's the way it is. That's the way it is, man. It's something. And that was what was so addicted about it. Saturdays, there's nothing like a Saturday in the SEC. Nothing.
That's one thing I kind of I went back and forth on as an intern because like they were like, we'd
Yeah.
love to keep you on. You're showing value to us at Mississippi
Yeah.
State, and like with our interns, we rotate who travels.
Yeah.
We're going to take you some guys on the road. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, what it would be like to stay on that sideline. I would go crazy.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, I got to take this. I got to take this opportunity.
Yeah. It's
But
crazy.
yeah.
All right, so let's talk some nuts and bolts now.
Yeah.
And this is something that I think is critical, because I think the athletic directors and the head coaches have to make a commitment to strength and conditioning. They've obviously done that at Madison Academy. So I always ask our high school coaches that are guests that how is your class schedule set up? And how is the day divided among the teams that you train? Because I think this is something that's huge in high school.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's changed over the years, and I'll kind of give you what it was for the first 4 and what it's been in this 5th year. We're a small school, and in order to be able to spread out resources, especially for scheduling, and a lot of people at small private schools wear a ton of hats. So we have what's called an alternating block schedule. I'll put it to you this way so all you guys understand.
Yeah.
Every kid has 8 classes. Okay. You got 5 core, 3 elective. All right. But we operate on a block schedule to where you'll go to classes 1, 2, 3, and 4 on an A day. And then the next day you'll go to classes 5, 6, 7, and 8 on a B day. And they just alternate. And whatever you left off on Friday or the last day of the week, you pick up on the next day. So my first 4 years here, and the way it's split for us was girls' classes were on A day, boys' classes were on B day. So, like, I'm going to get you either 3 or 2 days. It may be on a Tuesday, Thursday. It may be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It was a moving target at all times. The way our school is set up is our first block, no matter what the day is, was a middle school period. We did that so that middle school teams could practice during first block. So they could, so like if I had basketball or volleyball, that if you played middle school sports, you were in your sport practice and not with me. It was kind of a drawback, but I'd have everybody else. So middle school was with me every day, first period. And then second, third, and fourth block, no matter which day, A or B, was all high school classes. And we have 4 boys sections and 2 girls sections. So no planning period, always on the floor, always rocking, which made it difficult for me for a while. And that is year-round training. So, and it didn't matter what team you were on. It didn't matter what it was. The only way it was split was middle school, high school, and then male and female. So like 9th through 12th grade for high school, 7th and 8th for middle school. And like I tell people all the time, like I can have my, I had a starting right tackle who's got an offer at UAB on rack 1, and I've got, Johnny Trumpet on rack 12 who has to take his PE elective because we're the only PE in the school. There's no regular PE. It's everybody. Everybody has to take it at least 1 year to get your credit because we don't have the staff or the facilities to have multiple physical education coaches on and nowhere to go. So like if you're going to get your PE credit, you got to take a year of strength conditioning, and they just kind of flow in. So I get to see every kid. Like I'm in my 5th year here, and no teacher on this campus knows every name better than me, which is really cool. But this year we went to a new schedule. We decided to go to Mondays. We're going to be an all period schedule. So shorter class, see everybody. And then Tuesday, Thursday was A, Wednesday, Friday was B. And it was like that every week. Like a lot more continuity in that. And I still got 3 touches with everybody. But if there was a holiday or something, that all period day would just drop off, right? If you have Monday off or a Friday off for whatever. So what I did to pivot, so let me go back. So originally I would have a 2-day training model because I knew I would get everybody at least 2 days a week. Sometimes I'd have them 3, sometimes I'd have them 2 in that old model. And I would have a 2-day, basically a year-long developmental, slow cook, 2-day-a-week approach to train year-round. It would never interfere with sport games because we're just constantly training. And what we would do is the teams that wanted to train more for the kids that were in an off-season period, we would come before or after school on a non-class training day to get that 3rd touch. And then some wanted to even do 4. We even went up to 5. We did 3 out-of-class training sessions with football and 2 in last year, and it was really good. And I can touch on that later. It was a lot, but I was able to program a lot more individually for some kids, which was really good. But for most of the sports, that's usually for our big rock sports, our football, baseball, basketball, volleyball. But the other sports would just rock and roll with that 2-day-a-week year round, and it would still be very effective. moving to that new schedule with that 3 day a week with that one smaller period, I decided to throw in that smaller period to be an assessment day. So that's when I got my hands on force plates. It's when I got my hands on, I've got a adjust jump mat, a lot of technology that we use, and we would start building out assessment batteries to start tracking things, right? We would track vertical, we track isometric mid-thigh pull and peak force. We would do body comp assessments on that day. Like, we're not even training. We just roll in and we're doing assessments, right? We're assessing movement, we're assessing performance, we're assessing health. And then we would put that into our system to where all coaches could see it. And then we would train on the other 2 days. And then Monday would also be a great day before or after school to get a team training session in, because we weren't training in class. We were just assessing, so we would either do that. So off-season teams, we would try to get 3 touches, 1 team, 2 in class. In season, it's built in. Right? Our programming model is we're literally built like we're just never stopping. It's constant development. And then the way we train around games is with my stoplight system that's become pretty popular on Twitter that people have seen, my little graphic that I have.
Yeah.
Just because my schedule was so unpredictable, I had to go with something that was consistent and easy to execute. But that's our setup here, and it's worked pretty well for us.
Yeah. Wow. In depth. But you're doing things to ensure that you get a certain number of touches with everyone. Mm-hmm. Now, are the classes still separated, male and female?
They are here. Yep. Yeah. And I know a lot of places that do co-ed and love it, but we don't here, mostly because it's set up. It just happened to work out to where there's actually, because the way that the middle school starts is because like we're at a Christian school, and basically if they're not in PE, if the boys are in PE, the girls are at their Bible class, and then the next day it flops. So it kind of set that precedent early, and it just worked out. That's just how the schedule works. There's no real, like, our admin's not against it. It's that's just the way it worked out.
Yeah. All right. This is your 5th year at Madison Academy. Can you talk about the process of getting the sport coaches to buy in, which is huge, and how's that continued to evolve?
I'll once again state how lucky I am to be working with some people that get it. First and foremost, I work at a school where our president, our principal, and our assistant principal and our AD are all former state championship winning coaches.
Oh, wow.
All of them. So that's already, I'm already blessed. So they get it. Yeah. The culture's built in. And when they decided to go full-time strength conditioning coach here at MA, they were like, no, that we're buying into the process. They built a weight room that's extremely nice. Like, they were committed to it. So I already walked into that, and it was already set. So we knew that whatever head coach was coming in, that was part of the gig. Like, you're committing to our vision of our school, that strength conditioning is part of who we are. So that made it really easy for me to pick it up and take it with me. Now, that doesn't mean that I haven't had some hard conversations with coaches, right? That have had different, because I've been through quite a bit, right? I've been through every major team here has gone through a head coaching change since I've been here, except for baseball. So I've been able to figure out what that was like. Like, for example, my first year worked for a head coach who was really hands-off. Right. Good coach, but extremely hands-off weight room, kind of played the whole, like, I trust you, coach, do your thing. But there was no accountability coming from that side either. So it was kind of a mixed bag. He got a job in Tennessee, kind of where he was from. So he left, got another job. And then we hired a guy from the state of Alabama who has been a legend. He did the whole double dipping thing, right? Put your time in the public, go private. And won a state championship at a school that honestly probably has no business winning it, because they don't have the Jimmies and Joes that you would think, but he did. And I legit look at him as like the Nick Saban of Alabama high school. Like, if he was at a place with higher talent during his years at Huntsville, Coach Gotze would have definitely been. I mean, he's tremendous. I mean, he's taught me so much, but he came in and I was worried. Oh man, this guy's been so proven. And what he did at his old school, he was the strength coach. He was the head football coach, and he run the weight room full time. And I was like, he's going to take everything I've done. I've only been here for a year. I'm still figuring it out. But how calculated he was at making me feel, 1, I was important. 2, I was involved. He wanted to hear me out. He wanted to give his approach and how we work together. It was always an us thing, never a me thing with him. Mm-hmm. And that spoke volumes to me and taught me so much. And then the same approach with our head girls basketball, our baseball coach. They were all just all the way in. Like, I've had to have some one-off questions here, like, hey, what, for example, when I took out cleans out of our program last year, because I'm pretty adamant and voice about that, how I don't see value for us here with them. And my head coach was like, when was you going to tell me that? He's like, and I was like, well, let me give you an explanation. And we talked, and he was like, well, you got the data to prove it, and it makes sense. And as long as our main metrics that we track don't go down and things we value, it doesn't matter how we get there. It's the principles, right? And I was like, man, you know how many people would kill to hear their head coach say that?
Right.
Like, I'm very lucky. So it started from the top down, started from administration, started from a cultural deal from the very top, and then hiring really good coaches, being in a place where it was kind of already set. And then we just tried to make it even stronger from there and reinforce the things that are important that we want to see, rather than just like massive 1-rep maxes and, things that at the high school level, especially, are just kind of chasing the wrong rabbit.
Right. Okay. Great job too, man, because I think that's critical. And really the two most important things, I think, before you even start talking about sets and reps, you got to have a time to train them, and you got to make time to train them. And then you got to have principles that you follow program wide. And it always helps to have a head coach that listens and trusts you to do the things that you need to do. Yep. So and I know we could probably go on for days on this question right here, but just, can you break down your approach to programming and how you do it? You can pick a particular team, or you can talk about the whole athletic department. It's cool with me.
Yeah. When I got here, it's first time sitting in the head seat, as an assistant, you think you know everything, but when you finally run your own show and being by yourself and every decision comes back on you, you learn really quick, right? So when I first started here, I take a real ground up approach. I take, ground-based training. We want to be able to, become better athletes. It's not necessarily being about good lifters, it's about being a better athlete and trying to develop things. And the 5 year, if I look at my journey in the 5 years I've been here, I can't tell you how far I've come. And mostly because of trial and error, getting to know our kids, but also talking to extremely high level coaches, like getting out of here and going to talk to coaches and how they do things. And then the association, and just how many people I've been able to meet due to the following on social media and Twitter and all those things. My programming approach has really changed. But as far as that goes, I'm always trying to train full body. I was obsessed with the barbell for a while because I was good at it. I had to remove my personal attachment to big lifting because I loved it. I chased a 600-pound deadlift and loved it, could squat 5. Like, I love the training side of things, but it took me a long time to detach from, it's not just about the lifting numbers if my job is to help us win on the athletic side of things and keep kids healthy, right? Because we're not chasing a powerlifting title, so there's no reason to get kids hurt in a weight room or to chase a number for vanity's sake. Like, I'm like, man, that's just not it, and it took me a long time to figure that out. But as far as our training goes, I like to look at it this way. I want to develop the most robust, explosive athlete possible. That's number one, right? I want an athlete who can last, and I want an athlete that can absolutely play. And my philosophy is simple. I bounce every decision off of this 7-word, 3-phrase philosophy. Health drives performance, play more, play better. It's literally posted everywhere I go. It's in everything I do. It's everything I talk about, every presentation I do. I stole health drives performance from Alan Bishop at the University of Houston. I stole play more, play better from Gary Schofield, and I combined them. And what that means is the balancing game of programming is I want to drive the edge of performance as much as possible. I want to get as fast as possible, as much skeletal muscle mass as possible. I want to be as variable as possible, be able to move, make decisions, be explosive, be fast, be strong, produce force, all those things, but not at the expense of my health. Because if you really drive the edge of performance, I believe that's not healthy. Like, the most elite athletes in the world, you know what it takes to get there? Like, I always try to make the analogy towards Kobe Bryant. Like, not many people are willing to be as obsessed as Kobe Bryant, to be as elite as he was, and you can't necessarily consider that healthy. All right. On the flip side, the healthiest kid on the team is the one that never plays. You can't win if you don't take risks. So you got to have some robustness. So everything in my programming bounces off that. Be able to play more, so more snaps, more games, more minutes, et cetera, play better, be a better player. And then you extrapolate all the qualities from that phrase, right? In order for us to be a really good player, and then at the high school level, it's really general. Like, kids are so, they're uncoordinated, they're weak, There's a lot of things that they've got to get better at that will instantly enhance their game. So it's not a complicated deal. The complex part is being able to wrap up what's happening and then reinforce the information to the kid to drive behavior. To me, that's the complex part. But as far as the nuts and bolts of training, simple. I want to be able to execute things at a high level. Like we're going to squat, we're going to hinge, we're going to lunge, we're going to do single leg training. I like to do things either intentionally fast or intentionally slow. I tell my kids this all the time. Like the middle ground gets us killed. You know, it's like if you even want to reference to like the Charlie Francis model, like we either want to go absolutely explosive or we're going to go locked in, slow, holding positions, eccentric training. And just, you know, if I'm just like halfway going through a rep, that's not it.
Right.
Teaching the movement at really high levels through full range of motion. I need to be able to access ranges really well. That's the priority. Anytime we train, I tell our kids, you need to follow, literally have 4 rules in training. Cause like you can train percentages, you can program and all, but that's not the hierarchy. There's a hierarchy here. Number 1, can you do it through a full range of motion, right? That I'm asking you to, right? A quarter squat programmed has a range that I want you in, right? It's the same thing. So access the range of motion. Can you do it that way? Can you do it at the tempo I ask you to do it? We do a lot of accentuated eccentrics here because I think it really helps with coordination. 3, can you do all your reps prescribed in that set with those 2 rules? Can you hit the tempo in the range? Can you do, say, 8 reps? And then 4, go as heavy as absolutely possible with those 3 rules. You can't go wrong. Like it's really hard to go wrong if those are my rules. And my kids know it and they hold each other to that accountable. And then if you want to throw in exercises and methods, I mean, I've tried it all. We've back squatted, we've front squatted, we've Zercher squatted, we've safety bar squatted, we've goblet squatted, trap bar deadlift, regular deadlift, we've Olympic lifted, we've done, I mean, the science of the training part is not really the complex part. What gets us to me is like, as long as I'm enhancing progressive overload and not having too big of spikes in exposure, we're going to be okay. Cause I'm looking at the long-term, coach. I'm looking 8th grade to 12th grade. That's the cool part of me being in my 5th year is I've seen an 8th grader graduate here. I've been here long enough. And if you look back on my career, I jumped 6 months, a year, 6 months. I was never anywhere long enough to even test my theories. I was just going off of what the book said and what coaches said. This is what works. I had no idea. But when I finally started collecting the numbers and then trying to look at it from a lens of not trying to prove myself right, but trying to prove myself wrong. Can I falsify what I'm doing and poke holes in it? And as soon as I struggle to poke holes in things, like, oh man, I may be onto something for this situation, my kids in this area at this school with these constraints. Because that's the thing is if I go somewhere else, I can't take it wholesale. It's going to be some principles, but it's going to change. You know, and that's the thing about copy and pasting programs I don't understand. Like you can't take a 4th quarter program and completely copy and paste. It's just not the same.
No.
Right? It's the same. I try to always make an analogy to sport coaches. I'm like, coach, you can't take the Seattle Seahawks offensive playbook and put it to your middle school program. You don't have the Jimmies and Joes. You don't have. So why would we do that in the weight room? Because that's what we're doing. Oh, I got Bama's program. You don't have Bama's players. You don't have Bama's weight room. You don't have Bama's time. You don't have Bama's resources. That doesn't mean you can't take things from it. You absolutely can. And you should. You know? But so like going back to programming, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here.
No. That's why I have a podcast.
Yeah. So you got the lifting side of things, and I can give you kind of an insight to what our session looks like. Right. So my number one metric that I like to track is momentum, and everybody's seen it, right? Mass times velocity in a sprint. I like to use a short sprint. So that's a 5-yard lead in and a 10-yard fly. It's a 15-yard sprint. If you look at a guy that runs a 15-yard sprint, it's going to be 7 to 9 strides. And the reason why I like to do the 5-yard lead in is because it's really hard in our setting or anybody's setting to consistently measure a first movement 0 to anything in a run. So you got to find a way to get rid of human error. So that's why we do the 5-yard lead in. And then in 15 yards in a straight line, that's a stolen base, right? That's a straight line to catch a fly ball. That's how many strides you're probably going to take before you cut in a post route. That's how many strides it's going to take to get down the court in a transition in basketball. Like if you look at it, it's pretty freaking close, you know? So like it's also a strength exercise because you're going from 0 to 15. Like you've got to overcome your own mass specific strength. So it's also a strength number. I was like, okay, this is striking a lot of things to see if this is going up, if we can move our bigger body that putting on mass faster, that momentum number goes up. I think we're going to be okay. You know, like looking at that number was one thing we do. We'll warm up. We try to bring everything back to sprinting, everything back to movement, everything back to gait cycle, because that's what we do on the field. Right. And then like I tell our guys, like all of our strength work is just to accentuate that. And that's the priority, like to move your body better at a faster rate. It's not about what we do in the rack. It's about how the rack helps us over here and then helps us in our change of direction and helps us on the field and then just keep moving it and trying to just develop skills. And you'll notice in our weight room, like I've got some I basically run 2 programs. Like I run an entry level program for our younger guys and girls. And then I have a higher level program where, you know, I'm demoing 2 VBT units right now to try to dabble into more of like a velocity based range instead of a load based range. And I'm starting to see kind of when kids have enough skill to be able to do that. About that 10th grade year, you know, if you've been training with me for 2 full years, you know, you have an 8th grade intro, you got a 9th grade full foundational year. And then usually around the time kids turn 16 is when they're really ready to feel intent of a bar a little more. And it's fluid, coach. Like that's the thing is like, I can't just put it in stone to you because I'm on the floor and I am rocking and rolling and adjusting and flying and pulling. And I'm a puppeteer, man. Like we're flying and doing things all the time. And then we always try to come back and look at where our metrics, like I said, like we're looking at jumps, we're looking at isometric mid-thigh pull, we're looking at skeletal muscle mass, we're looking at sprinting or momentum. If all of our athletic qualities are going up, I ain't gonna try and fix it if it ain't broke, coach.
Right.
So that's what it looks like for us.
Yeah. So you touched on something about, you know, the Alabama 4th quarter program or the Seattle Seahawks playbook. So, you know, the formula changes or should change year to year because your team changes. And what we did one year in 2019 might not work in 2020 or 2022 or 2024 because of the unique group of athletes that we had. You know, we were talking about S2 cognition earlier. Joe Burrow's probably ranked in the top 3 of quarterback scores in the S2 cognition test. So the formula has to change as your roster changes. And if you like playing small ball, you know, if you're a small ball coach, but you've got, you know, 6 guys on your team that's got over 100-mile-an-hour exit velocity, you might want to change your hitting philosophy a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm bunting with a guy on second with that guy to play.
And so, you know, you got to change and adjust and on the fly. And I understand completely. And thank you. That was great. And you can tell that you believe in your system.
Yeah. I mean, only because I believe in it because I've tried to disprove it over and over and over every day I'm on the floor. You know, like people mistake it for some arrogance for when I say, yeah, I've done this, but it's funny you say that, coach, because literally 2 weekends ago, listen to Dave Ballou talk about all the data they have through Elite Form for 15 plus years and their assessment system. He's like, you can say whatever you want, but I know what we do works. And I know he was just like, I've got what we've got. I know I've seen it. I've tracked it, you know, and I'm in 5 years here at the high school level now. And I feel like I am just now scratching the surface of seeing some like patterns of like, this was working. This is working. This is working. Not the same program, guys, but the same approach. There's always going to be fluidity and changes within the approach. And that's why I'm willing to have hard conversations with coaches about things they believe in. And I just want to ask why. I'm not trying to disprove you wrong because of my lens, because I know your place is different, but I want to hear you explain. Can you explain the mechanisms behind it? And then tell me your drawbacks of where some of it you don't know yet. Because that's what I try to say. Like I try to take a programming approach of 70% that I'm really, really sure about, 20% that I'm kind of sure about, and then 10% of straight up experimentation. I'm trying this. I'm gonna try it. It's not gonna hurt our whole program, but I'm gonna try it and see if it works. And if you catch something from that, you just keep adding things to the pot. You know, it reminds me of being in Louisiana and those guys cooking gumbo on Saturdays when you tailgate. And them throwing stuff in there you don't even know, but it don't matter because it tastes good. You know, so that's the approach. You know, and I appreciate you telling me the confidence from it. It's just I love problem
Yeah,
solving.
you can. Well, and that's you got to do what you're passionate about, but then you also got to have a reason. And you know what it allows too. The way you do it there is long-term physical adaptation. Um, and you're going to get a lot out of it, and the return in the investment, the ROI is going to be off the charts because you're taking your time. And when you make, here's where I struggled is when coaches, whether they work for me or I worked for coaches they would make these philosophical changes and go completely against what they believed in the year before, even the week before, without having a clear cut reason for the philosophical change, and then not be able to tell you why that change is going to drive a different outcome than what you had before you made the change. And that's the important thing, that you have hard data that explains why you, or is an example of why you do a particular movement or lift or exercise or program. And that's the key to training. And that's why I think all of the technologies that are available now are so important, because you can validate what you're doing. And you'll hear someone say, I just don't think we're as fast as we used to be. And then you can say, no, I'm sorry. Here is hard data that shows that we're faster, or we're stronger, or we're healthier. So that's the part that I love about the direction, especially at the collegiate level and the professional level. I love the way it's going now because you can validate everything that you do.
And I think the value in the strength coach too, heavily. And this one I'm really trying to get better at, and what I feel like my focus has changed to in this last year is like I have a full-time assistant now. Like we're rolling.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and we can talk about that, and way we've developed the value for that, but being able to bridge the gap, like trying to convince sport coach. Because here's the thing: it's like convincing a sport coach that it's not a direct black and white of like X guy squats or bench X, therefore it's going to look like this on the field. There's a skill like that. To me, that's the definition of strength. Like people throw out, this guy's not strong enough.
Yeah,
I'm like, coach, let's define strength. Strength is applied force inside of a task constraint. That's how you measure strength, because it's going to look different in a barbell, look different on the offensive line or on the line of scrimmage. So he looks weak on film because of lack of leverage, not because of lack of force capacity, because check out the numbers.
Yeah.
How do I help you bridge that gap? What about the way you teach coming off the ball on the defensive line? How do you leverage a guy to get to the pass rusher? Or how do you leverage a guy to squeeze on the line of scrimmage? Yeah. And how can I add that into our training to where, all right, the guy's force is there. Now let's look at applied force. And can I sprinkle in one thing? Maybe it's a med ball move. Maybe it's something that's a little more specific to that skill that we might not have the time in high school to always train in Indy or in practice. Like, to me, if a strength coach can really connect on that level, and it's not, you can't do specific for every kid, but you can bucket guys and you can get close, and you can help, you can add value. And then now coach knows, oh yeah, dude, it ain't because you ain't strong. It's because you suck off the ball. Like your hips are too high. You didn't strike at the right time. Yeah. Like your moves got to get better. And now we start the needs analysis of every kid. It's easy for us to give you feedback. Like, you're going to be a really good player for us. You're really good in the weight room, but we got to work on this. You got to be a better route runner. You've got to be able to acknowledge, if you're a running back, you've got to be able to acknowledge what protection we're in. You've got to be able to protect. And it's funny because I grew up loving three sports. I say this all the time. I say, football is my favorite, was my favorite environment. Basketball was my favorite to watch. Baseball was my favorite to play. Oh, and I've gotten to know the game of all three because I was a three-sport athlete in high school. And that helped me really big time when I became a coach of strength conditioning, because I can speak the language at some level with every coach. And if I can do that, it earns trust immediately when I start asking them about their approach. Or like, we just hired a new head basketball coach this year who came from the college level, whose philosophy was way different than the last guys. He's way more up tempo. He wants to get the ball out. He wants to run. And I started talking hoops with him, and he's like, "Oh man, like our strength guy can talk hoops. That's cool." I talked to our baseball coach, and I was a baseball player, but I also played football. Like, I try to be a chameleon. I know the game enough to talk it. And then like in college, I got to see a huge turnaround in volleyball, a team that went 9-21 to 21-9 in a year.
Cool.
And I mean, I didn't have a ton to do with it. I mean, I helped with some of the culture part that was already set up to happen. I was a GA, but I lived with the assistant volleyball coach who was a national championship men's volleyball player, and just getting to learn the game. And then as I showed eagerness to him to teach me the game, it created more trust inside the staff, rather than it just being like, I know everything about weights. It's like everybody wants to talk about, I don't need to know the game. I don't need to have played. Like I just build I hate that phrase. I just build the engine. Like, I'm sorry, but if that's all you do, if that's literally all you do is bang weights, you can't complain about your value and people wanting to bring with you to be sought out to train athletes in a team ball game winning setting.
Right. You got to win. Got to win.
Yeah.
Well, I want to switch gears here. Okay.
Let's do it.
So the Moffitt family is big in baseball. Okay.
Okay.
Big baseball family. So I got a couple questions about baseball. Okay.
Yeah.
So I know that you're a right-handed pitcher and you had a great college career. So was there anything that you did as a pitcher in the weight room that you felt like helped you throw the ball harder?
I trained so terribly in college. I can basically tell you, if I would have done the opposite, I would have been better. So if you understand, I think my approach to training, because all I wanted to do was bilateral lifts and lift the house. I wanted to bench squat dead, hit some machines, hit a bicep pump, and get out. I wasn't doing no core. I wasn't doing no rotational work. I wasn't doing no single leg work. And wasn't nobody there to teach me. But like I came into as a freshman, and I was 89-92, and I was a closer, and I was one save away from breaking the school single season save record as a freshman. And that was kind of my niche, man. Like I could come in ninth inning, I was a dog. I was psycho. I was Max Scherzer. My eyes were this big. I'll fight the whole team right now. Like, bring it. Like, this is kind of how I was. And I was really effective, and I threw really hard, and it threw me off, as I went, because my second year, and I'll get to the training part here in a second.
Yeah.
But my second year, when I had transitioned, I was actually preparing to be a closer again. So you're you're ramping up your throwing program. You're getting ready to go. So I'm prepared to throw 30 to 40 pitches. That's what I would come in, in the ninth inning. But our Sunday starter popped his UCL the first weekend of the year.
Ooh.
And with who we had to give us the best chance to win, coach was like, Hughes, you're starting. So I went from throwing 30 innings a year to 90, and boom, there went the stress fracture. Right.
Yeah.
So like, then I got hurt, and coach looked me in the eye and was like, yeah, Cody, you're kind of fat. Like, you need to get in shape. Like, you need to change your body comp and all this. I was like, yeah, you're right. So I had my elbow surgery, and all I did that summer was work at CVS Pharmacy and go to the gym to work out. And all I could do, since I had my elbow surgery, was squat. I could still squat. Like, I had enough range of motion. I could still squat and do legs. One thing I say I did well is I got extremely strong and powerful in my legs. Like, I would jump, I would do plyos, I would squat the house. The programming wasn't great, but I got extremely strong legs, so I could push off the mound really hard.
Right.
I look back at my body type and know that I was not really that great of a rotational athlete, because I'm very much a wide ISA type, very brute force type of kid. And I was kind of more of a muscle thrower, but I could still throw 90. But the further I went in my college career, my velocity dropped every year. Like, by the time I was a senior, I was 85 to 88, but I was crafty. I was Greg Maddux sinker slider, not a big strikeout guy anymore. I was getting ground balls, missing barrels. Had to become really crafty, just because, one, I think that with my training approach, I didn't focus on range of motion ever. I was a parallel squat guy, and that's it. I did zero single leg work. I probably didn't have, and I actually started getting hip issues to the point my senior year, after a start, if I went and sat down at dinner and sat in hip flexion for an hour, I would have to be carried to my car because of how bad my hip hurt. And remember going to the doctor and they try to figure it out, try to dry needle it, whatever. No labral issues. There's nothing going on. And I was just like, just give me some painkillers so I can throw next week. Like I didn't care. But by the time I got done playing, like I look back, like my hip still bothers me to this day, coach. Like I've gotten multiple MRIs. I can't squat anymore. Like I've got basically the way that the doctors told me is that I've developed such callus on my femur. Like usually a femur looks like a doorknob where it's a thick head, skinny neck to create range of motion. No, it's just like I'm straddled like an end of a baseball bat. And my acetabulum is just hugging my femur. So I have extreme FAI in my right hip.
Right.
So it hurts like to the point where it hurts to play in the sun, like in the floor with my son. Like, so all I do now training wise is all single leg work, all rehab work. And I look back now and thinking, man, if I would have just done the opposite, if I would have worked on internal rotation, external rotation, if I would have worked on hip stability, if I would have trained in a full range of motion, I might have been a starter 92, 94 and been really good and stayed healthy. But all of us were ignorant. Every single one of us, I never had an arm issue after my elbow. Like I never had a shoulder issue. Right. I really believe my elbow issue was simply from an acute spike in volume load management. It had nothing to do with mechanics.
Oh yeah.
So that's after that happened. And then trying to fight back I think, catching up with getting stiff, not being able to rotate well, not staying healthy, and then throwing longer innings and becoming more of a starter approach rather than that gas closer approach. Naturally velocity is going to drop anyway. But that I look back on it and thought, man, if I would have just had a strength and conditioning coach that would just, get that through my thick skull on how to train for performance rather than just barbell performance.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so passionate about that today.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so do you look at baseball a little differently, having your experience in it and when the baseball team comes in the weight room there?
A little bit. I still think general training and exposure to multiple planes, full ranges of motion and getting strong is important. But I tell people this, I don't train the sport of baseball. I train the kid.
Yeah.
Okay. So like a kid may have a range of motion issue or pain at a certain range, or they may have some injury history I know about, or, cause like we still barbell bench the crap out of our baseball players.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. I don't understand why folks don't like it. If there's no symptoms, right? And the ranges of motions are still there. And we're also training at multiple velocities and multiple loads. We're still doing our rotational work. We're doing our arm care, doing full range of motion chin-ups, all of those things. But I will have, especially like we're in season right now, like constant communication. Hey, you got guys that are playing 3 or 4 games a day or games a week. You got guys that are the guys that play sometimes in situations so their inning count's not as high. They can train a little harder. Guys that are playing all the time, their volume really needs to back off. Hey, what's tender? How do you feel? It's like, especially high school baseball players, they're mental midgets, man. Yeah. My elbow starts hurting for the slightest. It's like, oh no, I can't. You gotta play to that a little bit. Right. Hey, go down. Like that's why in our weight room we created an area called Muscle Beach. I've got literally it's named at the top. It's a cable system, dumbbells and benches and med balls. So if guys ever need an approach or if a return to play type deal, like I've got an area for them to go to and they don't get in the way of everybody else. Like, hey, go to Muscle Beach. I want you to hit some cable rows. I want you to hit some high scap cable rows. I want you to hit some external rotation. I want to go dumbbell bench today instead of barbell. We've got overhead press today, but you're a little banged up. Like, let's lower that range of motion. Let's go to a 30-degree incline. That's more the game that I play. It's the mix and match and the bob and weave with the kids all the time. But as far as the off season goes, I will probably emphasize a lot more of a single leg strength training rather than our bilateral work. We'll still bilateral squat just to get some force going. But like we went full blown this off season, safety bar reverse lunge, safety bar split squat, Hatfield reverse lunge to really, and then focus on the mechanics too of staying in our quad and then doing a lot of single leg posterior chain work and stabilizing on the hip and being able to rotate the femur, rotate the acetabulum on a fixed femur. Cause that's what it is. When your foot makes contact, can you lead leg block? That's where power is going to come from. And like I said, like intentionally slow because the load's high, or intentionally fast, we throw 4 and 6 pound med balls like crazy. And then learn the sequencing. Like, all right, I'm going to develop these forces, but if I can't sequence those forces and I put those forces in the wrong area, one, the force is not going to go up the kinetic chain and come out the hand and throw hard anyway. And I may throw off the system and I might not stay as healthy. So that's that's more of the approach for baseball.
Yeah.
I don't take but if I took that approach with football in high school, it'd still be really good. Like
Yeah.
it's not like it's specific.
Right.
But that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Now, did you play, you personally, did you play any perfect game events, or had that not gotten big yet?
It started. I wasn't, my dad, man, he was, you make a commitment to your sport right now, that's your commitment, and that's it. So like I was in the summer, Monday through Friday, it's football workouts. Yeah. You're going to football. You're part of that team. You made a commitment. Now on the weekend, if I had a tournament here and there that people asked me to play, I would do it. But I was the epitome of the kid that didn't play a ton of travel ball and still play college ball. Like literally still got to play. And I played in some big perfect game tournaments that were big woo, but it would be different in this day because it's a whole different ball game. Like I feel bad for parents these days because they literally get sucked in with the marketing and the data and, PBR, Prep Baseball Report and all those things that come out. It's a real big show. And it wasn't, I graduated high school in 2012. So like I was just starting to come out, and I played in a few. Like I got to play before Lake Point was a thing. East Cobb was more of the name then. Yeah. I played in East Cobb tournaments, played those guys, and it wasn't as big of a show then, but I got to see it, but it's evolved into a whole different animal now.
Yeah. There is a book, it's about the Tommy John procedure. It's about Tommy John. It's called The Arm. Have you ever read the book?
It's tremendous. Jeff Passan did an awesome job of writing that book. Great
book. And so there's a section in the book where they talk about there's a correlation in perfect game events at the onset of perfect game and those perfect game events and Tommy John procedures across the country. There's a direct correlation between the growth of perfect game and the increase in Tommy John surgeries.
It's funny you say that because like that's a whole other topic with high school that I have to battle. And
well, I was going to ask you, how do you balance it in the summertime with your baseball?
I don't tell we tell our baseball guys, if you're in town, come train. If you're not, rest. Yeah. Like it's real hands off in the summer because I don't want to add on more stress to the body that they're already putting themselves through. And I can't avoid it. I'm not getting around that. Like this is what they're going to do. Yeah. That's why I'm such a proponent of talking about, I'm very, very, my voice is loud on social media when I talk about be careful promoting playing multiple sports in this day and age because of like they get sucked into that travel ball club AAU 7-on-7 deal. And then like you guys are going to burn kids out faster than you know. And if a kid back in the day, even just 10 years ago when I was in high school, it was just play your sport, move to the next sport, move to the next sport. If it was still that way, I would be the biggest fan of multiple sports you could possibly hear. And I still am a fan of playing multiple sports. But if a kid is playing in a basketball season, going to AAU tournaments and playing baseball, and they're like, holy cow, like how in the world am I supposed to train or develop anybody when they're playing more competitive games in a calendar year than a professional does at 15 years old? I just can't. That's not okay. You know what I'm saying? I really don't believe it. So like if they're going to play one sport and then at least you can try to schedule in some rest, some training, some preparation on the body and periodize it a little bit. Or if you play, because I think in high school today, especially in Alabama, 3 sports is impossible. We don't have any 3-sport athletes. You can't be good. 2 sports are the normal, right? And we got a lot of 1 sport. Like I think 2 sports perfect, right? You can use it as a different training, get different vectors. As far as like the social different sport, that's huge. Like, and I'm only talking about, Coach, when you are in the 9th grade and above. If you're under 9th grade, you should play everything under the sun. I really believe that. Like, but once you hit 9th grade, I think parents need to like really dial in. Just understand that you got so many energy points and you got so many. Just please allocate it appropriately. Like that's all that matters. If you can play multiple sports and do it, do it. Yeah. But I just hurt for these kids that are always hurt and shorten the runway of their life of their careers. Like that's the saying, right? The longer the runway, the bigger the plane. Yeah, take off. And if you shorten that runway, like you're getting short-term validation in 9th grade and being ranked X at perfect game, and then you never pan out. And by the time the kid gets to college, he goes 1 semester and he's so burnt out, he hates it and he quits. Yeah, I see that so often. I don't mean to go on a tangent there.
No, because it's a lot to manage. And again, that's part of this podcast is educational. And that's why I like having high school coaches here. It would be easy for me to schedule a different collegiate coach every week. But one, I think there's a lot of really good strength coaches that are coaching in high school. I really do. And you're at the grassroots level of it and have a huge influence over the type of athletes that make it to college.
Yeah.
And so that's why I like having you on here, because that is something that you have to deal with. We had to deal with it. Our two oldest sons played two sports, and it was football and baseball at a high level. They both played perfect game, and, they won state championships in their sports. And then my youngest son he hated baseball because he had to travel to all those baseball events that we went to. So he hated it, but he loved basketball. So, and he had to make a decision. He made the varsity team his junior year and said, I can't do it. My goal is, playing football is something that I love, and I love basketball, but I just can't do both. Because you have not 7-on-7, but you got AAU ball in the summertime. And he just couldn't.
But it's also the approaches the coaches take too. Like in high school now, it's full round. Like Brandon Herring at Hewitt Trussell, we're talking about like spring practice in the state of Alabama. You can get 2 hours a week for 10 straight weeks. It's all scripted. And if you're in another sport and you want to play football, you're missing out. You're getting left behind. Yeah. It's not even just about the AAU and club. It's that every coach is taking a college year-round developmental approach, which is really good. I get it. Yeah. But it's hard to keep up if you're going to play multiple. So like it's not just as easy to say just play multiple sports. Every kid should just play multiple sports. And remember, I want to reiterate, I'm talking about high school varsity level.
Right.
It's really tough.
Yeah.
It's really tough to compete, especially in programs that are really high level and state championship caliber teams.
Yeah. High schools are playing fall ball now.
Yeah.
You can practice in the fall. If you're a high school baseball team, you can play fall ball. You can practice all fall.
Yeah. That's right.
So it's tough. All right. Good job, man. Knowledge bombs right there, brother. All right. Let's talk about some technology. I know that you use Catapult in practice and training. Can you talk about how GPS tracking, helps you put a better product on the field, and then you can segue into the other stuff that you're doing?
Sure. Yeah. I'm the tech nerd. A lot of people call me the Google Sheets wizard because I really enjoy that. But I've been a nerd since I was a kid. So just to let you guys know that. But we just acquired GPS though this fall. This spring. So I'm very new to it. So I have no real value to give you other than this.
Yeah.
I convinced my head coach to buy it in the first place because of the recruiting aspect of seeing true top speeds and not fudged 40 numbers.
Right.
Take that with you, high school coaches. If you want to see the value of GPS down the road, but you want to convince somebody of value now, I can tell you how fast a kid is, and college coaches will know, oh, wow, that kid's a 22-mile-an-hour guy?
Yeah.
Okay, well, he's got something in the tank. Hopefully the film shows, right? If the film shows and you're like, I don't know how fast he is. Well, he's 23. Oh, wow. Okay. You don't have to run a 40 to know that, right? So what we're taking, we bought 10 Catapult units. We're a small team, right? So we only have like 45 guys on the roster usually at a 3A size football team. So we got 25% of the team, most of our skill guys, and we're just doing speed and agility work Tuesdays and Thursdays outside. We're doing a lot of max velo emphasis day, acceleration emphasis day, and then dribbling in some competition and some agility stuff. And coach, we're just collecting data. Let's look at the player loads of this session. Let's see how long we're on our feet. Let's see what the top speed numbers are. And let's just compile the spring. And then when we get back from spring break, which we're on right now, we're going to go into those 2 hours a week for 10 weeks. Now we don't get to go full on spring practice because we don't have everybody, but it'll be a little more football specific. We're going to go 2 days a week with that hour apiece of football. So we're throwing balls, we're running routes with units on. Oh, hey, let's see what that looks like compared to our sessions. How much distance they're covering, speed, distance, all. And let's just look. We're not making decisions. We're just looking. Then the summer, 707 deals all of our skill work in the summer, then practices, then games. And then by the time we get back to this time next year, we'll have a decent idea. So it's a long-term play, coach. And my coach understands that. And then I'm not getting it to always well, I'll have this and I will be able to tell my coach that he needs to spend 7 less minutes and 64 less reps on inside run. I can't do that. That's not what I'm going to try and do. That's a fool's gold.
Yeah.
But maybe down the road, because I've proven that I can handle data and actually explain it at a high level in other ways, that maybe to the point I'm like, coach, maybe we can find our edge just a little bit to be a little healthier in the 3rd and 4th round. And maybe we can find a little nugget here and there. Plus the recruiting side really helps for our guys to get looked at, on that side of things too. And they look cool. They see all the guys they see all their football programs and places they want to play wearing that catapult vest. And that fact that they're wearing one too, puts a little swagger on your neck, it makes you feel pumped up.
Intent.
That's right. Other pieces of technology we use, I have force plates, right? So we look at counter movement jumps. We look at isometric mid-thigh pull. That's kind of the two I've really looked at, just from a monitoring standpoint of not monitoring readiness, but monitoring progress. So it's a real subjective or objective way to see if we're going in the right direction. I use laser timing systems every single day. Like I'm getting close to like over 100,000 data points on that one specific sprint.
Oh, wow.
I invested in an external display that's on the end of our room. So when you finish your sprint, your speed pops up. So that creates a lot of intent in competition. We write down every single run, and we collect rolling averages. And you can see, I'm going to try to show this to you on the camera. I've got a training card right here in front of me. But you can see at the bottom here, you see how that's kind of like a 4-week rolling average. You got a time to beat and a speed to beat. That's on their training sheet. And I can see momentum numbers. I can see speed times in that acceleration. So we look at it, and they every day the kid knows I'm competing against myself to try to, if my average goes up, I'm getting faster. So I'm trying to compete against my rolling average. So we sprint every day with that. That's a technology piece. Lasers automated makes the flow go way faster, and it's reliable. And now I'm just starting to dabble in VBT, right? I'm demoing both the perch unit and an elite form unit to see which one fits our workflow better. They're both outstanding companies, outstanding pieces. Yeah. It's kind of preference at this point for both. But just being able to see our kids learn what real intent is, like actively trying to move the bar fast, and then try to shift their paradigm, like shift the paradigm from I'm trying to lift more weight than you to I'm trying to produce more power than you.
Right.
That's what we're looking at right now. We've only been doing that for like 3 or 4 weeks. It's just to kind of see what it does for us. But I think that's the next step as far as like tapping into those high threshold motor units, get the rate coding up, get the rate of force development up. And then the kids that have kind of hit that, all right, you can produce force but now how fast can you produce it? And then how can we apply it? That's the next step for us.
All right. So how does all of this work with the strength sheets that you build and because I want to know the Excel and Google programming templates. Let me back up real quick. Let me ask you, what type of lasers do you use?
I use Dasher currently.
Okay. So does Dasher have a cloud-based system that you can pull a CSV file from?
They do. I don't use it. I manually enter. So we have it set up to where we have our sheets. Man, if I had a printout, I could show you. But like we have our classes, and I've got a kid's name, I've got a kid's PR, I got a kid's rolling average, and I got a slow threshold, which is like 5% off of their average. And if they don't hit that, I need to have a conversation. Your effort sucked. That's number one. It's about 90% of the time your effort was terrible, or your start was terrible, or like, dude, are you hurt? Like, what's going on? Like, that was a slow rep for you on average. Like, I got thousands of data points on you. That was not a good rep. What happened? Coach. Okay, get your button line, get back and run it again. That sucked. Like that's normally the conversation. Yeah. And we write it down, and we've got, that's why we invested in that external display. Cause instead of like telling a kid, okay, who's up, writing down, what was the time? Oh, hold on, don't go yet. No, that slows the session down.
Yeah.
If you want to know your time, look at the thing when you run through, and it's rapid fire. And we just know names so well now. So who's running? Boom, boom. I'm just looking at the iPad, and then our other coach is coaching, and we'll flip. And we try to, every one of us will write down and manually enter. Let me tell you why, Coach. I do not want to ever lose the art of manually entering things because it keeps me up to date.
Yeah.
If I'm writing and typing things from a kid, I will be able to recall that information on the floor on the fly. If I get completely automated, I get too far away from it.
Right.
And I don't like it. I tried it. I don't like it. I want some form of entry. And Coach, I don't spend more than 5 minutes a week entering data because I've set up my flows.
Right.
I've created my environment with the spreadsheet to do it really fast. So
you're using an iPad or a laptop?
I'm using a piece of paper on clipboard, Coach.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh yeah. So like I've got the roster for that
and
day.
Jamming.
Yep. You run boom, boom, boom. So and that's the thing is like we don't We got shorthand codes, like we can go fast. I'm teaching my full-time assistant on how to do this, how to expedite the session. We know what it means. That ain't for the kids, it's for us. So like we try to go fast and learn our system and get really good at it. And like literally we have like when that session's done, flip the page, that's the next class. That's another thing too, is like the session order is always the same at high school. So it's not hard to figure out. And it's an alphabetical order. It's easy for me to look at a kid's face and know who it is quickly and write it down. And then at the end of the session, I'll come to the spreadsheet and I've got an entrance page for entering. So we'll run 2 to 3 reps of sprinting. I'll type in that, and I've got the coding set to where it'll pull the 2 fastest times for that week. So 2 to 3 per day. So we'll get 6 reps max per week. It'll take the 2 fastest times and average them, and that'll create that weekly average. And then it just rolls from there. And then I've got automated sheets that pull from the dates and everything to create that rolling average that speaks to our training card, that knows the day, knows the last 4 weeks, and then puts that number in. It's completely automated system on that part. And then when I print out the sheet for the next week, the dates move, the numbers move, it updates, and then they see their new number every week that they're trying to beat.
All right. Question here on your training cards and stuff.
Yeah.
Were you a computer science major or minor in school? So you're self-taught, you taught yourself all this.
Yeah. So I've been a nerd from day one, Coach. Yeah. I was the kid that was reading Harry Potter at the lunch table in 7th grade and getting made fun of. Like, that's just who I was. And I've loved computers forever. I've loved it. I was in my high school senior year, I directed a documentary for our senior football season and did all of it. Like I loved it from that part, from the video editing side. I've just always kind of been a technology guy.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. So like, I saw Mississippi State and the way they ran things. Went to West Alabama. I was like, well, I got to write programs. I got to have an Excel template.
Right.
Stole one from somebody. I actually reached out to a guy. Hey, teach me how to do this.
Right.
Well, how do I get the right numbers in the cell for percentages? Learn VLOOKUP. Right. Start learning little things here and there. And I'm like, dude, this takes forever. There's got to be a better way. Like, I can't. Okay. So, but I was like, but it works for me. Took the same thing to McNeese. When you have a staff, it's a little easier. Then I got here. I'm a one-man show. But I do not want to water down my product. I want to make sure every kid is getting the program that they want. I raised money, got Team Builder. I hated it.
Yeah.
Not because of the product, because of my controlling mind and how I wanted things done. It's not a knock on those guys. It's a great product. So I was like, all right, move fast forward to when my son was born in 2019. My school gave me 10 weeks paternity leave paid. I got to be at home for 10 straight weeks in the summer. I had a really good paid intern at the time who ran the show, and I programmed from afar, and I got to be home. And, infants eat, sleep, poop, repeat.
Yeah. So
I had a lot of downtime outside of what I was doing to take care of my son. So I was on YouTube probably 6 hours a day for 10 straight weeks and learning, taught myself. I was like, I want to accomplish this. How do I make that happen? And I've done that now and I've just learned more skills and learned how to get on YouTube and do it really well and created this monster that I had. And you've heard Brandon Herring talk about the story of how I created that sheet for him. It was so funny. He was like, oh man, Cody, I got this nice template, man. I'm so proud of it. He sent it to me and I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I was like, yo, this is great, Brandon. Like, let me do you a solid. I'm gonna hit you back in a week. And I recreated it and made it 10 times faster, 10 times prettier. And he was like, are you serious, dude? You did that in a week? And I was like, yeah. But like in a week, like on the side, I didn't even focus on it. And he was like, this is so tremendous. You need to sell this. And I was like, are you serious? I was like, yes. Like, coaches don't know how to do this. Like, they want to be able to deliver their program and they don't want to worry about all this stuff. And I was like, okay, coach. That's kind of when I got the bug of becoming kind of a side income entrepreneur. I put that out and showed it. Brandon obviously was a big part of voicing it and marketing it. And coaches, I mean, I kick myself now for undersell. I sold it for $65. I'm so mad. Folks would have paid way more for that. Yeah. And I had 200 people buy it in like a week. It was insane. And I'd never seen that kind of money that fast.
Yeah.
And then like my wife wasn't working and I was just like, whoa, like I've got a skill here that not a lot of people have or know how to bring to the marketplace. So that drove me to learn more on top of what I was doing to demonstrate value to my coaches. So it was a win-win situation for me to learn this skill. And that's when I've developed the strength sheets. It's been reiterated multiple times over. Now, all it is just a Google Sheets system to where you've got 8 programming menus for 52 weeks broken up into 13 4-week phases where coaches can program inside those tabs. And then you have a print tab of a print card that completely automates. You don't type on the card. You pick your week, you pick your phase, pick your week, pick your group, and the rack assignment tab, like you can pick rack assignments and they just print and it automatically prints it out. And coaches love it. And it's been a huge hit. And it's been my flagship product to help coaches. But I tell people that I said, believe it or not, the Strength Sheets product that I sell is like the high school varsity baseball version. The one that I use for myself is the big league version. I could never sell it. It's got 8 Google Sheet files that communicate to each other with my acceleration, my momentum, like all of our assessments with the daily programming. It's a lot. I mean, it's to the point where I'm almost breaking Google Sheets down. I can't handle it. I'm running like 1.2 million formulas at the same time. It's a lot. And I've put tons of hours into it, but man, it makes our life easy. We can put out a really high product and not spend hours on the computer every day.
Yeah. Herschel said the rack assignment part of it is something that he really likes. Mm-hmm. The way he uses it.
Yep. So like you've got the way that I use it in this sheet here, like this is a look at my sheet. Like it's a 1-day card. You can see that there's 3 kids on it. So it's 1 sheet per day. Like I don't have a printing issue. Like printing's not a problem here. I can print on that thing as much as I want. We've got like a deal with a company that gets unlimited ink. So it's not like that everywhere. Herschel actually found a way to take that card that's on the sheet, make it protected and put it on an iPad so their kids can see it on their iPad and then not screw up the formulas.
Right.
Like good for you, dude. I don't even know how to do that. You figured out how to do that with what I gave you. That's awesome.
He told me he's got 50 iPads and they grab their iPad and then they go to work and it's on their iPad.
Yep. And he's broken it down into rack assignment sections or how he flows his room. And he got real creative with it. I was really impressed with it. That's not how I use it, but if it's valuable to you, man, I'm super happy.
Cool. All right. We're starting to get toward the end of it. So I got a couple of questions I want to ask you. And one, we talked about this a little bit. Where's the future of high school strength and conditioning going? And are there any problems that you see?
Yeah. One, I think in 10 years, you're going to see high school strength coaches everywhere. I really believe it, especially in high market areas, maybe not in rural areas. And I'll break this down from only experience I have is in the state of Alabama because that's all they're focused on because everybody's systems are different, right?
Yeah.
One depends on if you're in public or private. Okay. Number one is the difference. Let's talk public. Let's talk private school first. Private school just has to buy in and has to commit to hiring somebody because they don't really play by government funding, right? So like I don't have a teaching credential. I got hired here. It's no problem. Private schools, but that's a whole different story because the state of Alabama, like you're not going to make as much money in a private school that you are at a public school in Alabama. It's the way that they pay people and salary schedules and stuff like that. Public school, though, the state of Alabama, you got 2 different systems. You've got city systems and county systems. You know, if you've got a county system with multiple high schools under one umbrella, one athletic director, one superintendent, if you're going to do one thing for one school, you got to do it for all of them. That's the way they got to divvy their money. And that makes it really tough to get hired, especially if they don't understand the value of a strength and conditioning coach. But there's a lot of conversations happening around everywhere to make that happen. Coaches are getting coaches in the door by saying, hey, we're going to hire you on an emergency certification because they can. Like if you've got an undergrad, if you've got a degree, they can hire you on emergency certification for teaching. Basically, you get 3 years to complete the certification, pass the praxis, take 6 educational classes, and get that credential. And they can hire you that, and then they slot you on one of their coaching slots. So a lot of guys coach a position, and then they're also their day-to-day during the high school day is the weight room, the athletic PE classes, which is a great way to do it. As far as coaches hindering being able to be hired in the high school is the teaching credential side. I hope that we can infiltrate the Board of Education somehow to know that the actual qualified guy to run a weight room has nothing to do with a teaching credential, right? Like it needs to be more based in, exercise science principles, but that's a problem too, because understanding education is huge too. Because a lot of education classes is about liability. It's about supervision. It's about teaching and pedagogy, which a lot of strength coaches need bad. Coaching and understanding that it's almost like it needs its own degree, which is kind of crazy, or its own certification, which the NHSSCA is working really hard and really diligently to get to. And maybe you can get nationally recognized one day, maybe 5-10 years down the road, to be like, oh, you're certified in that, you're a fit, you can be hired at a high school. Now, city schools can play a little different. You know, they're one high school systems, and if you look at state champions in the state of Alabama, Thompson, Auburn High, Central Phoenix City, they're all city school systems. They can kind of play by their own rules of what they have and create what they want. They don't have as much responsibility. So there's full-time strength coaches, like full-time strength coach only at Thompson, full-time strength conditioning only at Central Phoenix City. Like all guys that are former college guys that are there now. Brandon Herring's one, right? He's in a Trussville City school.
Yeah.
It's moving. We just going to keep making noise, coach. Yeah. Like I think it's going to happen, and we just got to keep demonstrating the value on every facet. And Garrett Keith, who's here in the state of Alabama, here in Huntsville with me at another private school, he put a presentation together at our state clinic about how to, he called it earn the right to train. And he talks about how to speak to administrators, how to put it in educational terms, how to, almost like if you're going to be at a professional development session of a high school, how to do that, to how strength conditioning matters just as much. It's not just about athletics. It's not just about banging weights and playing music. It's deeper than that. You know, especially in the day and age that we are, with kids never being outside as kids anymore. They're constantly on their phones. They need to exercise. They need to get away from their phones. They need to develop. They need all these other things on the social side, and just from developing a young person in general. Like we can go really deep on that outside of just the athletic strength conditioning side. It's going to happen, coach. I think in about 10 years, you're going to see a lot of college guys migrate, especially if the freaking Power Five eventually, if the Power Five and the SEC starts breaking off from the NCAA and it becomes semi-pro. You don't know what's going to happen in 10 years of this NIL stuff. I think a lot of college guys, you're going to see the high school gig be very, very sought after in the next 5 and 10 years.
Yeah. My dog was dreaming about chasing squirrels back there. Just could you hear him?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, he was having a dream about chasing squirrels, so I had to wake him up. Yeah, so you know, I started out as a high school strength and conditioning coach the first 6 years of my career, and I tell everyone still to this day, it's the best job that I ever had. You know, it's the passion and the energy that young men and women bring to the weight room every day is unbelievable. So I loved it. And then when I started coaching in college and we began developing young coaches, it was hard for me because I would always tell them, man, you don't have to rush into a collegiate job. You can coach in high school and get a great job and make great money. Mm-hmm. And now a lot of high school jobs are paying just as much as collegiate jobs.
Yep.
And then you have time to develop your philosophy. You've said it 5 times. You're a much better coach today than you were when you were in college. Mm-hmm. And that's what coaching in high schools allow you to do, is to take your time and develop your own philosophy and be your own boss. And it's a great career. And I'm just like you, man. And that's the purpose of the Moffitt method, is to help those people, you know, just like you're doing, is to help those people, to offer programming and so that you can focus on coaching and teaching and doing the other things that you're being hired to do. So yeah, right there with you. All right. Now, any advice for young coaches?
Yeah. My number one thing is humble yourself immediately. Acknowledge that you get excited and you start catching on a couple of knowledge points, and just remember that you're on a major path. You need to humble yourself and know that was the first thing Nick Savage told us as interns. Hey, interns, you don't know anything. Let me just go and tell you, you don't know anything. Just start from there. And it was great advice.
Yeah.
Don't get too big for your britches. Next thing is, if you want something bad enough, go get it.
Yeah.
Period. Like, do not make excuses. Don't limit yourself. Don't limit your mentality. If you want something bad enough, go get it. Go see a coach, sacrifice, make it happen. This is a job of longevity. And if you can survive, you're going to make it. Because if you can adapt and survive, you'll make it. Like, a lot of people get punched in the mouth at that one sign of adversity. Oh, never mind, I'm going to sell insurance. That's cool. Yeah. It's fine. But if you really want it bad enough, make it happen. And then third is, it's all about people, and you have to add value to people's lives first. quit trying to prove to people how smart you are. Try to prove to people how helpful you can be. Like don't prove how smart you are. What can you do around the room that adds value? And that's what really gets caught up with me, coach, is like interns these days want to act like they're too good to clean a machine. Yeah. Coaches are also act like they're too good to clean a machine, and it's only an intern's job. The best coaches I ever been around was, let me show you the way. I'm cleaning along with you. But like, if you know that emptying a trash can, collecting papers, setting up the room, setting up the field, how valuable you are in that setting. Like, that's what I had to tell myself at Mississippi State, was like, I know what I'm doing is valuable because I know they got other things to worry about, and time is the biggest constraint. And if I can take that time off their plate to do high level things, I'm helping an SEC program get better. Like, can you use that viewpoint and start there and be an expert at that first? You'll get your opportunity, right? You just have to be really good at adding value instead of trying to prove how smart you are and how well you know triphasic training or what you think you do or whatever, if I had to tell myself that, 7-8 years ago when I started, that's what I would tell myself.
Good deal. Well, I appreciate it, man. Great conversation.
Yeah. We could talk all day. I hope people want to listen to a 2-hour podcast, but this has been super valuable for me and insightful.
Yeah.
So
no, so our producers at Guarantee Media, they've told me, hey, you got to shorten them up a little bit, but I can't make it happen.
Well, you know what? You should tell them, Tommy. You should say, well, Joe Rogan has $100 million podcast, and every single one of his is 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
But it's there's a lot to talk about when you talk about strength and conditioning. There's a lot of moving parts, and what I didn't want to do is to have a podcast where we sat here and we talked about a few things and we never got down to the nuts and bolts. And one of the things that I think is important that we share from all sports, we're not just a football strength and conditioning podcast. I think baseball is important. Basketball is important. All sports, men and women, are all very important. And there's a lot to talk about. So I appreciate it. I really do. And you've done a great job there. And, I was impressed when I looked at your resume, and it's clearly evident that you did well in school. You're a smart guy. And, you're the type of young men and young women that we need in this profession. I'm an old guy, man. My biological clock is ticking. And the more young coaches that we have in here that are groundbreakers and that aren't afraid to put themselves out there and say what they feel is important, the better this profession is. And I truly believe that it is the greatest profession and the greatest coaching position in all of sports, because you see the athletes at their very best and you see them at their very worst, and you see the progress that they make on a daily basis. And they may not ever be the guy that wins the national championship for you, but there's somebody that's on that team that is working their tail off to be the best that they can possibly be. And that's what I loved about it and still love about it. And that's why I've been addicted to it for so long. So I'm not afraid to say I'm an addict.
I completely agree.
Well, okay. So you can follow Coach Hughes on Twitter and Instagram at CLH_strength. Again, that is CLH_strength. This brings us to the end of today's podcast. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Please, if you haven't already done so, follow the podcast and share it with as many friends as you got. Please check out our website, the MoffittMethod.fit, and our Instagram and Twitter accounts. Have a great day. Be strong, and we'll see you again next week.